Welcome to Tales She Told Me, a podcast featuring honest conversation about what it means to be a woman, a mother, and in business. I'm your host, Farrah Haidar. Today, we will be discussing work-life balance, and joining me is Tiah Lewis. Tiah is a wife, mom, best-selling author, and entrepreneur. She's raising 4 beautiful girls with the hubs and has been an entrepreneur for the past 6 years. Tiah is currently a successful real estate agent in the California market, as well as a life and transformational coach. She is passionate about helping moms all over the world create their own balance between being an entrepreneur or corporate mom and life at home with their family. She continues to inspire women all over the world through her stories and transformational coaching strategies to walk into their life's purpose. Tiah, I'll edit that out. Tiah, thank you for coming on and talking to us. Oh my God, what is wrong with me? I'll edit all this out.
Thank you.
All right.
No worries. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. This is a topic that I've struggled with a lot myself. I have 2 beautiful children. I'm a wife, a business owner, a sister, a friend, a daughter. It seems like I'm just juggling a lot and oftentimes feel like I'm failing to keep everything together. And I'm not even entirely sure after doing this for so long that work-life balance is even possible. So tell me what you think. Is it possible? What does it mean? How does it look like?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we are looking for this formula for what the balance looks like, right? So it has to look like, maybe if you're a numbers person, 30% is here and 40% is here, in the different areas of our lives. But really, the balance is so unique to each person's family and their, career that they're in, or, the time that they, have with their children, whatever it may be, kind of their own setup. So I like to really tell moms that the balance is what you create, right? And how you want to show up in these different areas, and how much time you want to devote in these different areas, because everyone's balance is going to look different. And so, much like you, I wear all these hats. And so I literally had to start telling myself, there's nothing that I'm shooting for per se, right? I'm not shooting for a certain balance of spending a certain amount of hours here or there. Is that at the end of the day, I know that I have done everything that I could, right, to just be the best version of me. And I feel like the other things will kind of line up, with that. When you're your best self, when you're healthy, when you've rested, when you, can be in your creative, then, your work will flow, all those different things. And so that kind of creates the balance. You're spending time with your children, you're spending time with your husband, you make different time for different things. That creates your own individual, unique balance. So absolutely, I feel that is possible. I think if we stop chasing this number or this amount of time and what it looks like, then I think that, moms can always find that in their own unique spaces.
So basically redefining, instead of being.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I relate to that so much, especially in the different stages, right? Like when you have a toddler, it's very different than having a teenager. Also, as my spouse, his career has evolved. He went from being a 9-to-5 guy to having his own business and having a little more flexibility with that. And I'll put that between quotation marks.
Right. Right.
Flexibility is interesting because that means sometimes that he's working all night,
Right.
But as that's happened, I've kind of maneuvered around it. But it's interesting to me because I think, well, I want to ask you this actually. Where do you think most women go wrong with work-life balance?
So I'm glad that you brought up about, so your husband was in that transition. And so there's an adjustment that has to be made, right? And I think that's a lot of times what happens. I look to it as seasons, right? And this is how, one of my mentors explained it to me. When my children were very small, when I just had 3 babies at home, the twins and my other one, she was like, this is the season that you guys are in. You are raising very small babies. There's not going to be time for all of these other things, right? The majority of your time, you're trying to catch the hours of sleep here. this is the season that you're in. And then as they grow and different things like that, you go into another season. Like you said, if you have a teenager versus a toddler, right? And so I think that in recognizing that balance, it does come with recognizing what season are we in, right? You understand that you're in the transition of, in the season of your husband transitioning from the 9 to 5 to the entrepreneur. Well, that's going to look different, right? So there's going to be an adjustment. It's like, I gave up the 9 to 5 to work 24, with that. But so it's the season. So we adjust. And I think when our mindset adjusts during those transitions and those different seasons, it makes it easier, right? And so I believe a lot of times as moms, it's like maybe we are looking at the way someone else is handling their season, or we may look like, well, looks like she has it all together, or she's doing XYZ, and I'm not. And we never know the full package of what comes with that. Maybe she has, grandparents that live there. Maybe she has, extended, just different things that we don't necessarily see. And so I think that's where we get wrong, is when we start looking at other people's balance and what it looks like, and think that mine has to look like theirs, and it's never going to look like anyone else's, So that's where I would say that we kind of, again, need to pull that back and really look at what's actually in my, wheelhouse, and what can I control here.
Yeah. One of the things I struggled with a lot, I think, and life got a lot better when I got over it, which was I am the primary caregiver of the children. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in some couples, it's a little different, right? They're not the primary caregivers.
Right.
But I felt like I was the primary. And therefore, that meant that I had to just completely almost repress everything else when it came to the kids. So I know you've heard that analogy of like rocks and pebbles, right? What you put in first. And I think for me, instead of saying, okay, my kids are a rock, my husband's a rock, but what I want is also a rock, right? And coming up with creative solutions. Instead, I was treating everything that I want to do as a pebble, and it got put in often often not put in, which doesn't make for a happy mama. And I can tell you.
Yeah, I was going to say, that leads to the mom's not happy and then no one's happy, right? So
yeah,
in disarray, it's like everybody's getting snapped at and everything else. But I think also too, kind of, adding to that is that, we do talk a lot about self-care and taking care of ourselves when we're raising kids. It's like you said, especially being the primary caregiver. And I remember when my kids were really little, me being at home with them, as you said, I was the primary person, right? There was, my husband, he helped when he can and stuff like that, or when he wasn't working. But again, it still fell on me. And I remember, I was just thinking of this morning. I remember being upset and, always saying like, I have to do all these things, or, where that frustration would continually come in because I wasn't allowing myself even at times to accept help. Right. I think sometimes we're like, well, yeah, I need all this help. And so it then you're clashing with your other half. But I think it was because some of the help that was being offered, I wasn't allowing it, because maybe it wasn't my way, or, vice versa. And so I think that sometimes when we are in those spaces and it comes to taking care of ourselves, sometimes that taking care of ourselves does, require us to take a break. It requires us not to try to be so controlling of the situation, how other people do anything. Like my favorite joke is like, but did you die? Because the baby's still fine, like it wasn't, it was just having that, being able to release that, and not being so, wanting to control every, aspect of different things like that. But then also, as you said, with being the primary caregiver, I remember I used to use that as like, we couldn't do anything because I would always say, I have kids. Like, no, I can't do that because I got the kids and I got the kids and I got the kids. And sometimes I think it hinders us from like allowing ourselves to be our full person we were maybe before the kids, because we feel like it's so much weight when it's like It doesn't have to be, right? You know, I literally had to release that out of my head. Like, wait a minute, I was giving these kids, I was trusted with these kids. There's no reason why I should be feeling like it's a burden, right? I'm still me. I'm still who I am. You know, how do I translate that to my everyday and get that balance, right? You know, that it's not, okay, they're taking up all of this of me and I can't have anything else. And then it goes back to, like we said, you know, what season are you in? That probably was a season where they took most, but eventually you come out, right? And you go into different seasons. And so it's not losing ourselves in those different seasons and allowing people to come in and help and, you know, give ourselves some time to really remember who we are, you know, like that we had a person before they came.
100%. For me, it was really first real trouble accepting help because I felt like it was a commentary on me. Well, if I was just good enough, I could manage all this, right?
Wow.
I could, if I was just capable enough, I could manage working ridiculous hours, starting a business and, having two toddlers at home and blah, blah, blah. I can do this. Right. And I think it's partially because we do put this standard on women. And I think women, because, when we enter the workplace, I know for me, before I started this business and when I had my first child, I was freelancing. I literally didn't tell any of my clients until I was 8 months pregnant with my first child.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want them to think that I was distracted. Right. And then I remember coming home and my kid was 6 months old and I had left her with my husband and he was working in IT at the time. He got called into this crisis situation. They're on this, they were on this conference call. There's hundreds of people, like there are 100 people on this conference call. And she's going Google Gaga, entertaining them as someone, and he's just like, sorry, guys, I have my kid.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Right.
Like, I would never.
Just not even unbothered. Just,
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, I got my kid. It's 5:30 on Friday. Like, I got my kid.
Right.
And I was just like, and I'm sitting here hiding the fact that I have children.
Right.
So I think
it's because we feel like we're like a kind of like a seen as that's kind of a weakness, which I think there's been some I feel like there's been some evolving in that as there's especially since the pandemic, right? Because you had people wearing, you were a teacher, you were the lunch lady, whatever job you wanted, right? That I think that some of that has kind of shifted a little bit, which is great because I think now, as you said, we can kind of not feel so obligated to try to hide this, while we're trying to pursue these, businesses and different things like that, that there's a wider, audience now who again, you had, like you said, you had, CEOs, kids walking in on them and, in the middle of calls and, there was nothing anyone could do, right? And say, it's like, hey, here they're going to be kids, and so I think, I know for me, I'm grateful that has changed because, I think I did when it was time to, when I was working in corporate, and it was time to elevate, I kept thinking to myself, how am I going to do that with the responsibilities that I have? How am I going to, if they're going to fire me? I remember telling my husband, like, they're going to fire me because if every time one of these kids gets sick and I have to take off for work, I'm going to have all these days off, like from you're like, hey, they're, and so I remember that being something that hung over my head that I was so worried about, that, I wouldn't be as effective, in that role because I had kids, But that's something that a lot of women face in this space, especially when they're trying to elevate to, management levels and C-suite levels and stuff, is that we're thinking, is this going to be accepted? But I'm so glad, like I said, that I feel like there's been this transition of women in these places that it's accepted, it's known, it is what it is. And there's, that does not make her any less than the next person, right? Yeah. So.
I know for a fact that I did that too. I limited sometimes my ambition, just going, oh my God, I can't do it. And I wish again, and I go back to that pebbles and rocks thing,
Mhm.
like if I had put it as a rock, as important, I think I would have found solutions because
Mhm.
thankfully I have a partner who's willing to contribute and help, et cetera. And a lot of times I found myself taking over activities, just like you said, because I wanted it done a certain way and no one could do it as good as me. I
And
mean,
no
it
one
doesn't
could do it like
matter,
me.
you know, and I kind of looked at myself and I said, does it really matter? You
Mhm.
know? And I think
Mhm.
actually, and I love your thoughts on this, is that when we do that, we actually step into and limit the relationship our partner can have with
Yeah.
the children,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, that's so good. Yes. While you were saying that, I was thinking that same thing. I remember when we were relocating to California. I had my oldest kid. I have a teenager, so I had one going to. We were going up to Sacramento for a track meet, and at the same time we were transitioning. So we were moving. My husband said, "I'll stay here because I'd rather be here where the movers are here and close out the house." And I'm thinking to myself, leave you here with three little people to be responsible for making sure everyth's out, the house clean. Like I was so, worried, right? Like, oh my gosh, Um, but I literally was like, you know what? This is I have to trust him as my partner, right? I have to trust that, he may not do it the same way I do it, right? It may be last minute and planner, I'm a planner, he's last minute, right? But he'll get it done his way, however that looks, right? And I think, as you said, if I continually try to correct or say, no, do it this way, or well, I did it this way, I can suggest things that were easier maybe at times, but I think it is, and it always has been very important, even with us raising, multiples too, for me and to allow him to do things his way. Because if not, then he's like, well, shoot, I'm not even going to help because you want me to do it your way all the time, right? And again, they're still here. They didn't die. They didn't, they're, they're, they're still good to go, right? It's just like, hey, they're still here. They made it, And I remember my mom, that was one thing that she did tell me was that, hey, he's not going to do it your way. You guys are two totally different people, but he's going to be fine. He'll get it done. I mean, he's traveled with them by himself. I mean, just, and I think there's I think for our spouse, there's a respect piece there too,
Yeah.
that they know that we want to trust them, to do just as good as us, and that we value, their contribution and their, commitment and their relationship, with the kids. And so, yeah, that's something that I do talk to a lot of my moms about, is that you have to let him do it his way. There's no who said your way was the right way. I mean, like there's things that we learn, yes, right, but let him do it his way. If you can't stand here baby crying, well then put on some headphones and let him figure it out.
Yeah.
Because you'll
Yeah.
never get a break.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I think sometimes we do a disservice to men because I think we don't
Mhm.
realize how much they're not trained in childcare. Like,
Mhm.
I grew up in a big family. I am the youngest of nine. I was an aunt at two. I had cared for children before. When I was 13, I was
Right.
caring for young kids. So there was a lot that you absorb. My husband is the youngest of five, never cared for kids, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, like they have to go and figure things out and learn how to do it. Again, it may not be your way. And
Right.
kind of
Right.
struck me when you said to leave them alone. My husband came to me, I think back in 2018, and said, it's my dream to go on vacation with my kids for a month. I am now my own boss. I can do it. I
Mm-hmm.
can take the time off. But you're opening this bakery and you can't take the time off. So I'm going to go alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
take two kids to internationally alone for a month.
Right. Right.
And he
Right.
said, yes. And a part of me was like, no. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
deprive my kids this opportunity
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because what? I'm not in control of the situation.
Right. There you, yep.
Yeah.
Now
Let
that
me tell you,
control of the situation.
it was a lot of, deep breathing.
Uh-huh.
And I got some pictures where I'm like, oh my God. But they had a blast. And that became their thing with their father. And it's memories they'll always have. I mean, a part of me said I couldn't be there for those memories, but another part of me was like, you know what? I was someone, my father traveled a lot for work. Actually, we're an immigrant family, so he didn't live with us a lot. I mean, I didn't live with my father till I was 13. So for me, them having that relationship with their father is such a bonus. And I just have to get out of my own way, honestly.
Because like you said, it looked so different from what you were used to, right? It was like, what do you mean? Like, I've never seen that. I don't really think that's okay. Like there's just, really, sometimes there's something already there, a belief or whatever already there in our head. And then when we're approached with something, we're like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. It's not necessarily that it's not right, or it's just that we've never experienced it. So it's fear, like, well, wait a minute, can't be, So I'm glad you opened up to let him do that. That's awesome. They probably created some bonds and some conversations that, you would have never known, right? That they, during that time. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So let me see. You work with a lot of women. I know you do because you're a life and transformational coach. So tell me something that comes up a lot for women that you hear, and what your advice is about it.
Yeah. So I like to speak to the balance. And I think it's because I feel like it's something that's always going to be in my wheelhouse because that's my life. Right. And so I think that I've had different experiences over the years of having to figure out that balance. My oldest daughter, I was a single parent with her at one time. And so, so I can speak to that single mom that's wondering, how do I pursue these goals and still try to raise this kiddo, right? And then I think that, like I said, when my husband and I got married and then we had these kiddos back to back, I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, kind of my story is once I had the twins, that brought me home because I was like, well, there's going to be 3 under 1 at my house. Like, how do I balance this with working in my corporate job? And I had to be to work at like 6 a.m. I was like, there's no way. Again, it came back to, I kept having to ask myself, was it a trust thing of my husband having to drop these kids off in the morning, or was it really just safety? Because him being responsible to do that in the morning was far too much, right? Him, working a corporate job. And so that brought me home. And so there was a different respect that I had to learn for moms raising babies at home. I had always worked. I didn't know what that looked like. And so I think because I've been through different stages of that balance and trying to figure those things out, that it's given me some insight that when moms come to me, that's usually what they're asking about. How do I pursue these things that I want to pursue, and these things that I know I'm called to do, and still be able to enjoy my family, be there with my kids? And what does that look like? Because I think a lot of moms in different stages, we deal with mom guilt. We deal with, am I giving enough time here or am I not? And, when do I start sacrificing the time to maybe pursue these other things or whatever it may be? And so a lot of it sometimes is mindset, because what I do find a lot is that, it could be an elder in the family told me that this is what my motherhood has to look like. So there's this picture that was painted for me and it has to look like this, right? And anything that goes beyond that is incorrect. And that's some of the work too of having to get moms out of that mindset of, but we're in a different time. This is different things going on. We have different, access to different things like that. And so it's not going to look the same. Sorry, I know grandma told you, XYZ, but this is a different world, right? Right now. And so, I think when they kind of come into that, to understand that it's going to be your own, it's going to be you and your family, your situation. and let go of everything else and the opinions of others, I think it really hits them in that sweet spot. Like, wow, okay, this is our own journey and I don't have to. So it's really just getting them to come into that acceptance space of this is yours. No one's telling you how to do it or, what looks good for your family. This is your family,
and that it'll be good enough. Right. Like, I think that's part of the problem with some women is they think, oh, I'm going to do my way, but it's not good enough, but that it is good enough. Like recently I've been taking on some more physical challenges and stuff like that. And I was worried because as I trained for these different things, that's time away from the family. Right.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my God. But then on Mother's Day, my son hands me this card and he's only 9. All right. And he hands me this card. He said, and it says, watching you pursue your dreams helped me pursue mine. And I'm like, you're 9, kid. Like, but there is something to be said. Not, and I don't mean like be negligent with your family. Like no one's saying, but there is something to be said for them seeing you go after something and modeling that behavior for them and what it means.
Right.
And I also go back to seasons. Like this was a short period of time. This was 3 or 4 months, in these 3 or 4 months. Hey, honey, I am going to be training for this. I'm going to need you to step up in these areas while I train. And then, and then it'll be different. It will shift. Maybe you'll have something that you need me to step up more for because you need to travel more, et cetera, et cetera. So it's taken me years to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like you said, sometimes, our kids are so resilient that they, when we have those conversations with them, even those conversations with our spouse, like, hey, this is coming up, or whatever, let's, it's on their mind, it's in their, or the reminders. My husband, he's always making reminders. I'm like, remember, this is coming up, and there's nothing wrong like with that because it's like, hey, keep it fresh, on their mind to know, hey, these days I'm gonna need you to take kids here or whatever. I just feel like it helps with the balance of it all, right? I hate to kind of keep using the word, but it does because it's going to, no one wants it to be difficult, right? No one wants it to be, feeling like it's work and stressful. So it's like, we'll just talk about it more. Let people know what's going on, what's coming up, hey, mommy may not be here on Tuesday nights for 4 weeks. And, I'm going to make it up to you doing this, or, maybe on Wednesday nights, we'll do this together, whatever, some type of, communication or way in which, it when it's fresh on everybody's mind and there's a constant being active, around these transitions and different things that are coming up. Like you said, it's a short period of time. I think sometimes another thing that I always find when I'm working with moms is the reason why I started using the seasons was because sometimes there's this idea that, oh my gosh, this transition or this adjustment is going to be like crazy forever, and it's like, well, no. Adjusting so that it can make your life better within a couple of months or whatever, right? So no, it's not going to be crazy forever, and even too, one thing that I see is that kind of going back to the what was learned, of what a mom should be doing. When I tell different moms like how I order my groceries, how I do this, how I do that, they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, do you know how much time I get back in my day? I don't care who says like, well, why didn't you go to the store? Why didn't you do this? It's like, I could care less. Like, it's how much time am I getting back in my day that I could devote to my business, to my family, to, I mean, it's just, and you get everybody else in on the plan. Sometimes my daughter's like, I put something in the basket, like, because hey, it's just trying to create, more time together or more, time to do things that matter, right? I mean, getting up and spending 2 hours at the store with my kids, screaming is just not something that I want to do. So why not make it easier on myself, and do it the day before or night before or whatever, and not have to worry about it. So I think it's to, like you said, as they're watching you, do these different things. My 7-year-old is so much like me in the fact that I'm seeing it now that she's a planner.
Mhm.
So write down her list. Well, this is my routine for the next morning. And, and I'm like, she's watching me do these things. This is how she's learning. Okay, if I want to get these things done in the day, maybe I need to set out a plan for this, And so they're constantly watching and just mimicking our behaviors without us even knowing sometimes,
Yeah,
So
they do what we show them, not what we tell them, right?
absolutely.
That's what they do.
Absolutely. Right.
So I'm going to ask you one final question,
Okay.
and it's: do you have any things or habits or beliefs or whatever that are non-negotiable for you that help
Mhm.
you with your work-life balance?
Well, I would say for me, my faith is like one of the most important things that keeps me grounded. And so especially during those times where it was just really difficult in not having like the family help and support and different things. When I was raising the girls when they were really little, that's really what kept me grounded. So like my time to sit and pray, or my time to just get like by myself to kind of set my time for the day, or read or whatever it is important because I think it kind of sets that tone, for your day, or even times where I know like things were going to come up is going to be really crazy. I'm like, okay, I need to get some time to really settle my mind to not get overwhelmed or to not, feed into different distractions and different things like that. And so that for me has to be a plus. If not, I feel like I can't even get through like the day productively, it just feels like it's like all over the place where, you're like, what time is it? So I think that keeps me grounded for sure.
Yeah, I have a couple of rituals like that too. Well, thank you, Tia. I could talk to you for, believe me, a couple more hours, but it was great to have
Thank
you on
you.
the show.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
for the
Pleasure.
inspiration and comfort you provide to women. And as a listener, if you would like to learn more about Tia, you can follow her on Instagram at Tiah Lewis 6.0. She also offers a free 30-minute Get Me Together discovery call. As
Mhm.
always, I'd love to hear from you about this episode. What does work-life balance look like to you? Hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Farrah Haidar. Also, I'm giving away a PDF of some of the best quotes we've had on the show, beautifully designed to print, cut, paste, whatever you like. Email me at farrah@farrahhaidar.com and title it Quotes. All the links are below in the show notes. Talk to you soon. Till then, chase your happy.